In the blink of an eye, a fun day at the pool turned into a nightmare.
They were all playing games, and the kids were doing tricks into the pool, and it was the shallow end. And Josiah decided that he was gonna dive headfirst through some rings in the pool and went straight down and took direct impact on the top of his head. And when he initially hit, he had no feeling.
He came straight up, and I could tell he was hurt because he started crying.
And they had pulled him to the side of the deck, and he was crying. Well, then he slowly kind of was able to move and regain movement.
At that point, our friend's mom had called my mom to tell her that there's been an accident.
When you first get that phone call, it's one of those things that every parent that you never want to hear. And when it's your baby, you know, your heart sinks.
Jeanette's husband, Ricardo, was flying from Atlanta to Jacksonville when Jeanette heard the bad news. When his plane landed, his cell phone lit up immediately with several texts and voicemails.
When I heard in my wife's voice the intensity, the strain, I immediately sensed this isn't good.
I could tell by his eyes, I could tell by he was crying, and he could hardly move. He was very awkward in how he carried himself, and so we got him in the car and went straight to urgent care. Within 5 minutes, they had him in a neck brace on a stabilized board. They had all the doctors there. They had contacted Life Flight.
X-rays showed that Josiah broke 4 vertebrae in his neck.
The doctor pulled me aside and just said, I just want you to know, prepare yourself for the worst. This type of injury in the medical field, we have a saying, C4, breathe no more. And when you break the C4, that is a 1% chance of survival. And he said, I just want you to be prepared. You know, we're gonna get him there, we're gonna do our best, but please, you know, call your family and be prepared for the worst.
Josiah fractured C3, C4, C5, and C6.
The hospital is about a 45-minute drive, could be an hour sometimes with traffic. And, you know, he may or may not be okay when you get there. You know, that's when you just put it in the hands of God. And, you know, you look at him and you just confidently go, baby, it's gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay.
Jeanette was not allowed to join Josiah on his flight. She could only watch as the chopper flew away. She called her husband again to give him an update.
She said, they took him. And my heart just sunk because she used the words, there's a 1% chance, they're giving him a 1% chance to live.
Once I had contacted somebody to get me to the hospital, I had made a phone call to my family and just let everybody know.
So Jeanette called family. Family called friends. Friends called churches. A prayer chain was well underway.
I received a phone call on the way when we were driving from some dear pastor friends of ours that just began to speak life over him and say he's gonna live and not die. I don't care what those doctors told you. Your baby's gonna be okay.
I walked off the airplane, put my sunglasses on, because I was a little embarrassed, people seeing a grown man just begin to weep. Fell to my knees, and you know, it was totally crowded airport, and just fell to my knees and just started screaming to God, you know. You can hear the cries of your spouse and your family, but you are helpless to do anything at all. I'd die for my sons. I'd give my life for, you know, and there was that point where I'm just praying, God, break my neck. Can you work it out to where, could you work it out to where it's me, you know?
Ricardo caught the first flight back to Atlanta. After hours of tests, Jeanette finally got a report from the doctor at the ER.
They had the x-rays from urgent care, and they had the x-rays that they took there. And they said, we don't understand, they cannot be the same x-rays. These are not the same x-rays. I just want to let you know, your son is gonna be okay. Your son's gonna walk, and he's gonna be fine, and lead a normal life, because at that point, the concern he was gonna live was imminent, but if he was gonna lead a normal life was still in question. I think the x-rays were different, nothing but the hand of God. I mean, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt it was just nothing but the hand of God that, you know, that it didn't actually sever.
Their prayers were answered. Josiah still needed 8 hours of surgery, which was successful. He stayed in the hospital for 3 weeks while he recovered.
When we brought him home from the hospital, the entire neighborhood was on the front porch, and they had all made, you know, signs and balloons, and they were cheering Miracle Boys home. And He was just inundated with love. They would camp out here at the house and watch movies with him. And so by the time the first physical therapy appointment came, Josiah, I called the doctor and I said, I don't even really think he needs to go to the physical therapy. He's doing so well. And so we went in and saw the doctor and he said, I think you're right. I think he's okay. And we never had to attend a physical therapy appointment after bringing him home to the house. It was only in the hospital.
Josiah fully recovered, and he likes to tell his story to others.
I think when people pray, God hears them. I had a 1% chance of survival. If they said it was luck, I'd explain to them how I'd say it's not luck. I mean, it could be their opinion, but it's not an opinion, it's a fact about what God can do and how he can do it.
Josiah is an active 12-year-old who loves to play basketball.
Oh, that's going on TV right there.
But neither he nor his family will ever forget what happened.
When Josiah had gotten his neck brace off, it had probably been a few days after. Micah was asleep, but Josiah was crying. It was one of those hurt cries that a parent would know. And I walked in befuddled, and I sit next to Josiah, and he's laying face down on his bed. And I'm like, baby, what's the matter? And he turns on his back, and he looks at me, and his face was just soaked with tears. And he says, Dad, I almost died. And I was blown away. But as I put my hand on his head, I began to move my hand on his back. And as soon as my hand hit that scar, I immediately knew what I was supposed to say to my son. And I knew it was going to be one of those things he's going to remember the rest of his life, because I know I will. And I simply said, Josiah, you feel this scar? And I said, baby, your scar doesn't remind me of death. Your scar reminds me of God's grace and of God's love and of God's mercy. Josiah, you didn't get this scar from falling down. You got this scar when God pulled you out. Never ever again let this scar remind you of death. Let it remind you of God's grace and mercy.